Hello and welcome to this video. Today I'm going to review the Not Another Crop Kit by Jackie aka NerdECrafter, which she did in collaboration with SmartArt. Now let's open this. And first we are greeted with a layer of bubble wrap to protect everything, and then we have this really lovely design package paper, and it has these really cute dragons on it. I just love it. Under the paper we see her instruction guide, and it's really detailed and it has images and is in colors, and I'm really impressed with how it looks, and it has a really beautiful design on the front. Next up we have this really useful tiny silicone funnel, which is collapsible, so it's easy to store, and because it's silicone it will probably also be really easy to clean. Then we have this SmartArt card, and then we have this plastic palette which has 6 little indents for paint. Next up we have this really great X-Acto knife, which will help a lot when sculpting, and this thing is really sharp and has a beautiful feel in the hand. And then we have this sanding stick, and I always wanted one of them because they're so useful for sanding small parts, since they have this different rounded tips that will help you reach smaller areas. And next we have these salty brushes, which look pretty great, but I will test them out later, of course. And then we have this armature wire, which will be super useful for sculpting overhang parts. Next up we have this collapsible travel bowl, and this is made out of silicone, and it's perfect for mixing because you can clean it really easy. Next up we are getting some Sculpting tools, and they have the ballpoint and some softer silicone shapers. And then we get the eye mold. Next up we have those tiny containers of epoxy sculpt, which is a 2-part epoxy based sculpting medium, and I'm really excited to see how it works. Next up we have this really huge block of super Sculpey. And then we have some rubber bands to hold the mold together. Next we have this bake-on Sculpty, which will really help adhere the clay to the figure. Then we have this Sophie and Toffee UV resin, which we will use for the eyes, and this bottle has the really cute designs of the carp and some dragons on it, and I really love this label. Then we have an extra bottle of Jacquard Neopark color in red. And then we have this Marabou alcohol ink, which has this rainbow glitter effect in it. Next up we get some popsicle sticks. Next up we have this really powerful UV flashlight. And we also get this huge bag of permastone casting compound for the figure later on. Next up we have this cup that shows us the measurements in cups and milliliters, which is super great. And then we have some more of the Neopark and some Lumiere colors from Jacquard. And we also get this spatula, which will be hopefully pretty useful for mixing. And here we have this really sharp kneader tool, which has a kneader permanently set into it, and this is great for making details in the clay. And of course we have the mold of Jackie's hand sculpted figure base, which I'm so excited to see. And we also get this really beautiful customized working mat, which is self-healing. And lastly we have this resealable bag for the clay and these really adorable stickers. And now it's finally time to get creative. Now I really struggled getting this mold together, but after I got it and put the rubber bands on, the seal between the two parts was pretty great. And then I measured the compound and the water exactly to her instructions and tried to mix it in the bowl. And I really had some trouble with the spatula. I think it's because it's too soft in front and maybe the powder got compacted while traveling, since I didn't see her have any problems in her videos. So I just used a popsicle stick to help me break up the greater lumps, and then I used the spatula again to thoroughly mix everything. And then I used the funnel to help me fill it into the mold. And the consistency of the plaster is really great because it flew in really easily, and I didn't have any trouble with things clumping or anything. And I accidentally overfilled my mold, which is not that huge of a problem because I can just cut off the excess, and when it's dry I can just easily empty out the funnel. Now it took about half an hour until it was dry. I could still feel that it was slightly wet, but it was mostly hardened so that I could work with it. So I removed the excess from the top, and then I realized I had a hole on the arm which came from the air bubbles. So later on I tried a second pour in which I only filled the mold about halfway and then tilted it slightly to get out the air bubbles of the arms, which really helped. And now that we have our figure base, we can finally start sculpting, which I'm really excited about. And I'm starting out by doing the eyes, and I'm going to use a fun technique which includes using the needle. So I first fill in the pupil with a black dot of paint with the help of the ballpoint shaped tool. After that's dry, I'm adding a couple of drops of the rainbow ink, and when that's dry I'm adding some of the pink Neopark color. And once that is dry, I'm going to use the needle to scrape away lines of the color. Then I put it on blue color and doing the exact same. And lastly, I'm adding some black for the background. Now that I have finished the eyes, I can finally start sculpting. And I decided on a character that would be inspired by a gargoyle, more specifically a dog gargoyle. So I start by shaping out the nose area. Now it's really hard to describe for me what I'm doing exactly because I'm mostly sculpting freely with the flow and I don't plan anything out. After shaping the nose, I'm adding the eyes and the eyelids, and I blend everything out. And as you can see, the eyes have gotten a little foggy. I suspect that some of the alcohol from the alcohol ink might have spilled on the bottom of the mold and made the resin foggy, but I can totally fix that later with some high gloss varnish. Now I know that you can bake your progress to save it, but I'm not really the person that likes to bake in between, so I'm just sculpting my figure until it's finished and then do one bake, which is just my personal favorite. If it's your first time using clay or you're not too sure that you won't smush any of your progress, you definitely should bake it more, and I know that you can bake this clay quite a lot until it browns or burns, so I would definitely use this technique. To add the stone texture for my gargoyle, I'm actually using a stone because it has the most natural textures to get it look like my figures also made out of a stone, which is a great tip for sculpting. You can also use tinfoil or other objects to make texture. Since the wings of this gargoyle are more or less free floating, I'm going to use some armature wire to help them stay up, because I know they could break off really easily if I don't. After the bake, I really didn't like how the hands looked, so I decided to resculpt them, and I used the knife and the sander to help me sand off the inner part of the hand, and then I'm using some epoxy sculpt to help me sculpt the inside because I didn't want to have to bake again. And sadly the wings broke off while I was sanding off the parts I didn't want, which is not that big of a problem because I can just glue them on later. And I know this happens because they have way too little point of contact to the figure. And now that we are finished with all the modifications, it's time for painting. And since this is a gargoyle which is made out of stone, I'm starting with a really dark base and make sure to get all the nooks and crannies in, because this will be our base color that will shimmer through everything. Then I mix a slightly lighter gray with some brown tones in it to make this dry brush, which I liberally brush all over. Then I make a even lighter gray dry brush, and then I'm using a teeny bit of white as a dry brush to get this stone effect. And lastly, I'm adding some of the shimmery green as moss to make it look more like really old stone, and I really love this shimmery color, it's so pretty. Now the very last thing I need to do is uncover the eyes from under the paint, and I wasn't really worried about getting paint on the eyes because I knew I could just scrape it off. And then I'm using some of my high gloss clear varnish, and with that we are finished with the figure. Now overall I really love this craft kit. It was not a craft kit at all. I spent hours working on it. it was pretty enjoyable, and because you had so much plaster, you can make multiple figures and be really, really creative. Also, the packaging design is absolutely adorable, and I would definitely use this package to store some of my crafting supplies. As for the items, I could see that Jackie really gave them a thought. For example, using the collapsible bowl makes it so that there was way more space in the packaging and stuff. But I still have some minor issues with this craft kit that I will share with you now. Now, first up, I found the jacquard paint package was way too large for the amount of paint that was in there, and they could have shrunken the plastic waste by just shrinking the package even a little bit, or to make it just paint sized or use cardboard packaging. Now, the second thing I noticed was that the plastic resealable bag was way too small for the Sculpey. So you couldn't even fit in the block if you're only using a little bit of it, and you would have to provide your own bag to seal it properly. Now, while mixing the compound, as I said, I had some trouble with the spatula being way too soft, but that's not the hugest problem because you have the stirring sticks to help you. Now, one more major problem I saw with the compound, because it was so dusty, and I'm sure that even if it's non-toxic, getting it in your lungs, even just tiny bits, can't be healthy. So as soon as I myself saw this, I immediately grabbed my mask. And I just would have loved to see a little dust warning from her in her guide. While cleaning up later on, I realized that the paint on the cutting board could be easily removed with alcohol, sadly, which is really sad because it's a beautiful mat. So I would just advise you guys to not use anything too harsh to clean the mat. And that's anything really bad I could say about the craft kit, because I really enjoyed working with it all in all, and it was a huge amount of craft supplies for the value. And the designs were absolutely lovely, the guide was absolutely lovely. I can just repeat that this is one of the most enjoyable craft kits I have received to this date. So, Jackie, if you see this, you did a really great job. Thank you for creating this awesome thing, and I hope if you create a craft kit in the future that it will be as amazing and fun as this one. And I'm excited to see all of the sculptures everybody that got this craft kit will make. Now I hope you have a great day. Bye!